Labor's Tanya Plibersek and the Libs' Anne Ruston join us now. And first question to you. In 2017, your colleague Matt Canavan championed a similar policy that would have allowed people to use super to buy their house. And you said this.
We need to be very careful that you don't pour a bucket of kerosene on a fire.
You developed a taste for kerosene?
Well, I mean, what you probably should have done is actually listen to the whole transcript of what I was saying that morning on the ABC. But what I would say is that, and I advocated then and as I would advocate now, that you need a package of measures, and what we saw with the announcement yesterday was a supply-side measure with the downsizing initiative, at the same time as giving young Australians the opportunity, when they buy their first house, to be able to get a bit of a help from their own money. So, I mean, I think my comments, if you listen to the whole transcript, are very consistent, what I said in 2017 to what I'm saying today. I think it's a great opportunity for young Australians to get into the most important asset they will ever buy sooner than they otherwise would be able to.
Tanya, the focus today, of course, has been on the Coalition's policy. But if you listen to the experts, they claim that Labor's policy too could impact on prices. Saul Estlake, for example, said, be it first homeowner grants or be it concessions for property investment, shared equity schemes, anything that allows Australians to spend more on housing than they would results in primarily more expensive housing, not in more people owning homes. Would you agree with that?
Well, that's why we've been so careful to put a maximum value on the homes that you can buy, and that's why we've targeted our shared equity policy at people earning $90,000 a year or couples on $120,000 a year, and we've limited to 10,000 homes a year. So because we're targeting people who can't otherwise afford to get into the housing market, and because we've put these other constraints around the policy, we won't be inflationary. And the other thing, of course, is we're proposing to add to housing supply with our 20,000 additional social housing dwellings and 10,000 extra affordable rental properties. The policy that the government announced yesterday, almost a decade after they first came into office, doesn't add a single house to housing supply. And in fact, people are talking about this downsizing thing for older Australians. If they're downsizing, if they're moving to cheaper housing, they're actually going to be competing with those first home buyers trying to enter the market. So every economist, and John Howard and Peter Costello and Matthias Cormann and Malcolm Turnbull have all looked at this policy that the government proposed yesterday, raiding your super to buy your first home policy, and they've all rejected it as throwing kerosene on the fire of housing unaffordability.
But to Tanya and to Anne, I mean, a lot of Australians are saying, if you're all both so concerned, both sides, about the inability for young people to get into housing, why haven't you done something already? You've been in government now, and, for 7.5 years. Tanya, you were in government before that. Why didn't you do something 10 years, 15 years ago? Why now?
Well, I think we have done a lot since we've been in government to support Australians into home ownership. I mean, in the last 3 years, 300,000 Australians, through a series of measures, have been able to get into their own homes. I mean, the home guarantee scheme, 50,000 properties where people can get access to finance with as little as 2% of a deposit, which has been fantastic, because that 2% program is targeting single parents, and we know that 85% of the people who have taken up that scheme so far have been single mothers, which is great. But other programs like the Home Builder program does put new stock into the market.
But I think you've left all the heavy lifting, both of you, to the state governments.
Well, can I answer about Labor's policies? We haven't been in...
Go on, Tanya.
No, go on, Anne, sorry. But then I want to turn after Anne. Go on.
Well, what I was going to say is that we know that many of the levers around housing supply do sit with the states, whether that be land release, whether it be planning laws and the like, and we provide a huge amount of money from the federal government to states for housing and homelessness through our $1.6 billion each year, as well as making access to things like funding for community housing providers to build social and affordable housing through the NIFIC. So there are a number number of things that are already in place, and we'll continue to work on it. This was
Tanya,
yesterday's
you'll go,
announcement
have a crack.
was
Come on.
another measure.
Yeah,
Tanya.
I really want to have a go here, right? This government's been in power for almost a decade. Housing is less affordable to rent. It's less affordable to buy. There's fewer first home buyers in that younger age group. It used to be 60% of younger people were buying their first home. Now it's 28%. And homelessness continues to grow as a problem. When we were last in government, we built 21,600 new social housing dwellings. We built 35,000 National Rental Affordability Scheme dwellings of 100,000 that we had in the pipeline. Tony Abbott stopped that program at 35,000. We had a Housing Affordability Council that was designed to work with state and local government to increase housing supply. Again, Tony Abbott killed that program off. We introduced 80 new homelessness services. This government even got rid of the target to halve homelessness. So on every measure, we did better when Labor was last in government, and we would do better in the future with our Housing Affordability Fund to build new social and affordable housing, and with our shared equity scheme that would help 10,000 new home buyers or existing home buyers, the people who have owned a property in the past but maybe because they've got divorced or something no longer own a property, help them into the housing market where they'd otherwise be locked out. And $100 million for emergency accommodation too.
Right, and yet, so for all of those measures that both of you have mentioned, the house price for those entering buying their first homes has only gone up. We're speaking to Shane Wright about that earlier, and that's the point that he's made. So all these measures have been inflationary at that end, like at that part of the market. And that raises the question of modelling, as though, I mean, both of you have named quite big policies here. Have either of you done, and can you offer us modelling that will tell us or give us an indication of what will actually happen to house prices?
Well, I think the most important thing is actually to listen to the industry experts, and we've seen the Property Council come out today, the Master Builders come out today, and in reference to our policy to allow young Australians to be able to get access to their own money to buy the most important asset that they will ever buy in their lives, with the integrity maintained, because
these are all
the
people
money
who
has
want
to go
property
back
prices
in.
to go up. That's actually their interest. Do you have independent modelling that will show what happens to them?
Well, what I was saying is that the people who are the industry experts are saying that these measures are going to provide the opportunity for young Australians to be able to get into their own home. And Tanya made the comment before about getting young Australians into the housing market. This is exactly what we're proposing to do, but we're allowing them to use their own money to do that, so that they actually own their own properties, not the government.
Okay, Tanya. So
Industry Super have modelled a policy like the government's proposing, and I think their estimate for price increases in Sydney was about $134,000.
Okay, sure. So what about yours?
This is exactly the sort of modelling we should be doing. Well, we've examined our policies very carefully. We've got expert advice, and that's the reason that we have kept it to people earning $90,000 a year or less, or couples earning $120,000 a year or less, and that's why we've limited it to 10,000 people, and that's why we've also got these policies to increase housing supply. There is nothing in the Liberals' policy that increases housing supply. It just pushes up prices. All
right, so we're relying on experts rather than modelling, which is not necessarily invalid, but I take that from both your answers. We are out of time. Thank you very much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Great to talk to you.
Thanks, guys.